Okay, welcome to Roman numeral 9, AP Notes, the Great Depression. Or the Great Glut, or Glut of Plenty. Okay, first, the stock market crash. Now, first, I know you know Black Tuesday, but to confuse you, there is also a Black Thursday. So, two key events the stock market crash and bank failures both left too little money in circulation for the nation's economic needs. So, questions. How do you fix the economy? You got two different points of view. You get the prevalent point of view that is still in effect today, big time. John Maynard Keynes. He comes up with the philosophy of spend, spend, spend. Pump money into the economy. He's saying it's kind of like priming the pump, if you know anything about a water pump. If the water pump hasn't been used in a while, it's dry and it won't pump up any water. To get things working again, you got to pour water in it, fill up the tube, then you get the suction, and then you all of a sudden it gets going. And once it's going, it's good to go. It's kind of like a straw. You know, when you suck up water, as long as it's good to go, it's good to go. But no water, you got to get some in there. So government should spend, spend, spend. Now on the other side, you get laissez-faire economists, free markets, von Mises and Hayek. They say less government economic management. The government should stay out, laissez-faire. It'll fix itself. It always has. But now remember, we got something new involved here. We got a Federal Reserve. That has never existed before. And that is the antithesis of laissez-faire. We're not going to see that video. It's too long anyways. So when we look at the sequence of events, stock market crashes, commercial banks fail, banking system collapses. So let's take a look. First institutions to feel the effect of the stock market. Many ran to withdrawal. Now, if you heard that the bank down the street went out of business and your neighbor lost their entire life savings, it was gone forever. There's no government program to get it back. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to run down to the bank and get your money out. That's what everybody else is doing. And you know, you live in the city, everybody's close to their bank. All of a sudden, you get a run on the bank. And overnight, the bank goes bankrupt. Remember, they don't have all your money. They take your money and then they lend it out to others. That's how it works. So when everybody runs to get their money at once, they just don't have that much. So thus, they have to close forever and you have no money. Nobody has any of their cash. So with that, unemployment rises, going to 25% of the workforce. I mean, wow. Take a look here. I got the unemployment rate for 2010, and you can see it was pretty bad. So let's take a look at the 50-50. Remember, in 1925, the country becomes 50% rural, 50% urban. In the cities, factories are cut back, falling wages, bread lines in Hoovervilles. On farms, nobody's got money to buy stuff. Commodity prices go down, yet they're in debt. Farmers are always in debt, having to buy new equipment, and since they only get paid during the harvest time, now that the prices go down, they don't have the money to pay the debt. You get foreclosures, people losing the family farm that's been in their families for a century. Throw in a little bit of drought and a dust bowl, and you get great, huge migrations and repatriations. So just take a look at the debt they were accumulating in the roaring 20s. Hey, why not get debt? There's always going to be more money around the corner. Then the Dust Bowl. Maybe this will work.
A dust storm is a strong, turbulent wind that carries fine particles of earth for long distances. During the 1930s, a series of dust storms devastated parts of the Southwest and Great Plains. These storms, known as the Dust Bowl, rank among the worst environmental disasters in history.
So if you have any kind of essay having to do with the environment, certainly the Dust Bowl goes on the top of the list. And you can see the area affected. This was the major. Oh, excuse me. Can't get my arrow to work here. Well, it's not going to work for me. So you see the major area of Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas. Really bad. And so you're going to get migration leaving there, going to the farming valleys of California or the northern cities, Midwestern cities. Remember, bear market, bears hibernate. They go away from the market. Bulls think things are good, so they're going to invest in the market. And we certainly got a bear market now. Businesses fail, unemployment rises. Nobody's able to buy goods because they're unemployed. More businesses fail. It's a huge snowball rolling downhill. So now with Hawley Smooth tariff, excuse me, you can see it's going to go worldwide. Our profits plummet. We got no money to invest. European nations can't pay off war debts. Their production plummets. They can't afford to buy American goods. Our profits plummet. And again, the snowball worldwide. You can just, the numbers speak for themselves. So what they used to be making versus what they were making in 1939, woof, woof. Man, poor Nebraska. Okay, so some easy graph here to look at some of the causes of depression. You know, if you got a whole bunch of have-nots and a few haves, the small amount of people can't spend enough money to keep the economy going. One of the tricks Ford was going to discover is by giving money to his workers and doubling their pay, they had money to spend, helping the economy, helping Ford. Easy credit hid problems that were there, and you saw that graph with the rising debt. Of course, you got Black Tuesday. Banks collapse. Lack of demand for crops. Can you imagine? Americans are going hungry, and yet we had huge surpluses. It blows your mind. And uneven distribution of nations' wealth. You got a few haves and have-nots. So do you know how to build a fire? So first you need firewood, then tinder, a spark, pine needles catch, then you have flames, then you have gasoline, you got a bonfire. And then what you're left with is the ashes. That's how we're going to look at the Great Depression. There's Hoover. We've already talked about his past. He was one of the good cabinet members of Harding's administration. He asked for volunteerism and promises a chicken in every pot when he's elected in 1928. First, agricultural sector. They were already in a Great Depression. Things were already hurting. They had, with World War I, enough of that. With World War I, Europe was buying every grain of corn though they could grow. So anything they grew, they were making a fortune on. So what do? Man, you buy more land. And if you buy more land, you need to get another tractor. So I'm going to get a loan on that tractor. And they go more and more debt. And they got more and more land plowed. And now the World War I is over. And they don't need all that food anymore. And now you owe on the tractor and you got a whole bunch of extra land. And because everybody's all got land, they're growing more crops. And because they need more money, the price of the crops go down. There's some firewood for our fire, the Great Depression. More firewood. Demand for crops falls. Production remains high. Rural depression. So already we're in a depression rurally. Next, you only got a few haves and many have-nots. Thus, when there are bad times and you want consumption, there's just not enough people to spend. How many yachts does a rich person want to buy? So this uneven distribution of wealth will lead to the Great Depression, an underconsumption. So overproduction, plus what's happening to the farmer, lead to underconsumption. Now, what's the tinder? The tinder's that small little dry stuff that you just look at it and it catches on fire. It won't stay on fire for long. It's enough to get the bigger stuff going a little bit. Get your small little twigs going. So the tinder here. What you got is debt, 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 debt. Installment plans. Buying on margin. Accumulating more debt. This all sets up for the economy to implode. Now it's all sitting there, but it's a roaring 20s. Things are going up. Stocks are going up. And then woof. Now, if I'm using contextualization, the Great Depression, the New Deal are the ultimate for contextualization. They apply across time periods with so many other periods like the Progressive Era, Jacksonian Era. Let's take a look. Speculation. You have the Depression of 1937 due to speculation. Not stocks, land, but still you compare the two. Now, when you buy stocks, you should be buying a stock and not looking at it for the next 20, 30 years. You just buy it and you set it aside. You don't look at the highs, you don't look at the lows, you look at the long term. When you're looking at the short term, you're not investing, you're gambling. And that's what the stock market was becoming. Buying on a margin allowed the smaller guys to go in there and gamble. And trust me, the bigger guys were doing it too. And so here, quickly, you can read for yourself the events leading to October 29th. Honestly, September 3rd is when the curtain's getting pulled away from The Wizard. And if you haven't seen The Wizard of Oz, you need to watch it.
October 29th, 1929, Black Tuesday. The New York Stock Exchange is in a panic. Frantic investors have scrambled to unload their stocks at any price. Everyone wants to sell. No one wants to buy. Suddenly, even the most gilt-edged securities are practically valueless. The stock market crash has come, and the Great Depression has begun.
So, on average, every 20 years or so, you can expect a downturn in the business cycle. It's just how it works. Take a look at the depressions. You can list them off. 1819, 1837, 1857, 1873, 1893. You see the thing going here. So now that we got the tinder set, the pine needles start catching. And what do I call the pine needles? The bank collapse. The bank collapse, frankly, it was getting so bad, it thought that none were going to be left standing. 27 states out of 48 did not have one bank. Another cause, the policy of the Federal Reserve. They limited the money supply to discourage lending. So right when you need lending the most, the Federal Reserve will turn and shut down the valve to any money lending. Again, Federal Reserve, maybe this is what caused the Great Depression to last so much longer, or to cause the Depression to be great. Now we got flames, man. We got flames. Companies are closing. They're laying off workers. They don't have money to buy stuff. They can't buy stuff. Then they're laying off more workers. Nobody's buying our stuff. We need to save money. And like a snowball rolling downhill, we got 25% unemployment. Now, it's bad enough you have a fire. But to throw gasoline on your house when it's on fire is not a good idea. I know, it's kind of silly, but this is what they did in the Hawley-Smoot tariff. Hawley-Smoot tariff said, okay, we're going to protect American businesses by putting a huge 60% tariff on world's goods. Yeah, that'll do it. Come on. You got to think about ahead. And what happens? Well, All the other countries do the same thing. Now nobody's doing any business, and all of a sudden a depression turns into the Great Depression. International trade is destroyed. So now we got a bonfire. Reparation payments are done, imbalance of trade is there, Germany ceases. It's all bad. All bad. And the world economy thrown in the Dust Bowl. Black Tuesday. Americans facing hard times. You could ride on top of a freight car, and then just had to be careful. If a train is going 60 or 70 miles an hour and it hits a curve and you're walking and your back's to the turn and you don't see it coming, a little tiny turn can throw you right off the train. A lot of people have been killed like that. I mean, times were tough. Bank failures. Hypothesize. Why did bank failures go down in 1933? Is that good news? No. The reason so few closed in 1930, well, so few. Jeez. How business failures, why so? There was just less businesses. There weren't that many more to close. Banks, wow. It was a fire. Like I said, in 1933, 27 out of the 48 states had no bank. Love this cartoon. Great cartoon. Here's a victim of the bank failure. You can see it on. And the squirrel, who's known for saving his acorns through the winter, says to the guy, "Hey, well, why didn't you save some money for the future when times are good?" The guy says, "I did. But because the bank closed, he lost his entire life savings." If you're not unemployed, most likely wages or hours were cut. Bread lines, soup kitchens. Notice the clothes they're wearing. These are not people who were poor. These are people who are doing okay. Long coats. Those aren't expensive. They got hats. I mean, these are people well dressed. Former bankers, businessmen, factory workers. Now they're waiting in huge lines for a cup of coffee and a donut. So when you are barely making enough of what you're spending, you know times is bad. No savings. They're waiting in a soup kitchen. Look at these guys. Guys got 3-piece suits. Nice hats. These are people making a decent living. Now they're waiting in line for soup.
They used to tell me I was building a dream, and so I followed the mob. When there was earth to plow or guns to bear, I was always there, right on the job. They used to tell me I was building a dream, with peace and glory ahead. Why should I be standing in line, just waiting for bread? Once I built a railroad, I made it run, made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once I built a tower up to the sun, brick and rivet and lime. Once I built a tower, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once in khaki suits, gee, we look swell, full of that Yankee doodly-dum. 500,000 boots went slogging through hell, and I was the kid with the drum. Say, don't you remember? They called me Al. It was Al all the time. Why don't you remember? I'm your pal. Say, buddy, can you spare a dime?
What blew me away was seeing those pictures of the fields, huge, massive fields, all plowed and planted, with not one shoot of growth coming out. So here he is, a guy who helped make the railroad run, who helped win World War I, and now he's asking you to spare a dime. Those pictures were by Dorothea Lange. So if you get some type of an art question, this is the woman you want to know for this era. She took these famous photographs, which are just fantastic. If you ever get a chance, you're interested in photography, you need to look at this woman. Dorothea Lange was her name. She's part of the New Deal program, who paid artists and photographers, and she would document photographically the average people, the people suffering in these Hoovervilles and tough times. So here you can see, I'm just going to flip through them. Here is a Hooverville, and you won't find these in the country where you're from. You're going to find these in the cities. Country folk, they take care of each other. In the cities, you get a lot of people lost, just nowhere to turn. Also, you get country folk moving to the cities, finding nothing there, and then living in the Hoovervilles. Look what their walls are made out of. Now, you got to remember, there was a prevalent attitude back then that taking charity, that was just bad. You don't want government assistance. You want to pay your way. Charity took away your pride, your self-worth. And so they would have these camps where you pay $1 a month and you'd at least have water and a place to put your tent. So you find in land that otherwise nobody would use, setting up these Hoovervilles under a bridge, keep you dry. Now, the car might not have gas, but at least you can sleep in it. I mean, they got no land, they got no house, they got no place to go, they got no money, and they got a family. They got kids to feed. They are desperate. Desperate. There's the kitchen. So here's one of those camps I was telling you about where they pay $1, $1 collected by the city. Not even sanitation there. They refuse handouts. Very different from today in the welfare state. They would take discarded fruit and cut out the bruised part. Hey, pigeons, good eating. This guy went to the cows, to the market, and milked the cows early in the morning before anybody could catch them. Again, Dorothea Lange, outstanding pictures. This is my favorite of all. Okay. You're going to get the loss of many farms consolidated into bigger farms. How did Murphy Farms get so big? Here you go. He with cash can buy up a whole bunch of them. And you get huge farms consolidated. So when you have that big idea of consolidation, you got it also in the farmlands. Now, it was already happening somewhat, but now it's accelerated greatly into what we have today. Prices of wheat and cotton, all kinds of farmers' commodities. I don't need to tell you much about it. That says everything. My God, it was costing you more to plant the crop than it was worth raising sometimes. 1 million lose their farms. 1 million! 1 million farms! All consolidated into bigger farms. And one of the greatest factors for this, besides the Great Depression, is the Dust Bowl. Now, what led to the Dust Bowl, you say? Well, honestly, they shouldn't have moved there in the first place farming. There wasn't enough rain all the time. Yes, sometimes there was barely enough, and they took the advice of the scientists in the 1890s who said, hey, follow the plow, the rain will follow the plow. The rain will follow the plow? Oh, yeah. Just go follow. The rain will follow. You go plant it, the rain will come. And it did. But what you don't understand is wind currents, ocean currents, they all have a factor playing in cyclical dry periods where you get no rains for 20 years. And this is what happened in the 1920s. Massive drought that keep plowing up this soil, which, over 1,000,000 years, the grasses had evolved where they held down the soil. Deep topsoil, and that's what made the land worth so much. But when they kept plowing up this grass, now nothing was holding down the soil. There's no trees stopping the wind. It's a constant wind. Matter of fact, you'll find people who can't live in the Great Plains just because the wind drives them crazy. There's always wind blowing that topsoil. And, the soil underneath, whoop-de-doo, that's not worth crap. It's the topsoil that has all the nutrients, and it's just getting blown away because of the loss of the natural grasses. I mean, these pictures say it all. I mean, wow, can you imagine that coming? And you being like this dust storm could be for 2 days. This particular dust storm moved 3 times the dirt moved for the Panama Canal. So these people leaving, Oklahoma being the center of the Dust Bowl, were called Okies. These Okies, these hicks from Oklahoma coming out here to California. And do they want them? Heck no. Jobs are hard to come by. We don't need people coming into town taking what jobs there are. So they're met with stiff resistance, animosity, and violence even. 800,000 migrate, move to California, northern cities, Midwestern cities. This is going to motivate the government to help farmers. I mean, I've shown you how many times I got to show you these facts here. So, love this primary source. What was happening to African Americans during the Great Depression? Quote, the Negro was born in depression. It didn't mean too much to him, the Great American Depression, as you call it. There's no such thing. The best he could be was a janitor or a porter or a shoeshine boy. It only became official when it hit the white man. Frankly, they're saying, what depression? Nothing's changed for us. Things still suck. So you're going to get the competition for jobs between migrants, Mexican-American farm workers in states like California will heat up. This is going to lead to a lot of nativism. So we've looked at this already. Now, Hoover's going to say, when faced with the Great Depression, the onset of it, he's going to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. We can't have government giving out handouts. That will destroy the American character. We've started from the get-go. Cutting down trees, building log cabins. I mean, we've done it from the get-go, from Jamestown. This rugged individualism that defines Americans will get eroded, will get ruined if we start giving out handouts. I guess Little Orphan Annie is an excellent example of it. Quote, Annie is tough, with a heart of gold and a fast left, and can take care of herself because she has to. So, like we had Horatio Alger doing the young boy, making it respectable. Here you got Orphan Annie toughing it out, keeping her rugged individualism. If you're taking handouts, you're dependent on someone, and you can't stand on your own 2 feet. So Hoover's response fails. FDR's response fails in a way too, but we're going to look at the differences. First, laissez-faire. Second, gets a little bit more activist. Third, really gets activist with the RFC and makes a huge mistake by taking down the Bonus Army. So let's take a look at Hoover's response to depression. Tries volunteerism. That's great when things are good, but when things aren't good, Not going to happen. They cut wages, lay off workers. Local governments cannot local governments just can't do it. Now, this is what Hoover's saying. The federal government should be involved. This is a local thing. And they just don't have what it takes. This is huge, way bigger than they're prepared for. So, increasingly, he's going to get blamed for all the bad times. And so he persuades Congress to establish the RFC. So, power to make emergency loans to banks. So what he's doing is giving them a pail of water to put out the fire. A little, too late, although it does open the door for FDR's huge progressive welfare state. This is what opens it up. You got conservative Hoover going with the RFC, abandoning rugged individualism to some extent. Now, he doesn't give direct government aid. That means checks to individuals. But still, he's increased that role of the federal government dramatically. Like Teddy. Teddy wasn't the one who busted the most trusts. Taft busted twice as many. It's the first. And here you have the dam broken to laissez-faire. Really, this is it. All out welfare state is opened up at this point with RFC. So what we'll call it is trickle down. He's going to give loans to banks, and they're going to give loans to companies who are going to hire workers, and all the benefits are going to trickle down to the smaller people. Businesses don't use the loans to hire workers. Bankers do not increase loans to businesses. So it was all just to bail out the rich. Sound familiar? Okay. All right. We're not going to do that. Bonus Army. Oh, here. So you got, I'm going to just give one guy. His wife died in the Dust Bowl. She got dust pneumonia. 3-4 days breathing that in. All that stuff gets in your lungs. And if you don't have very good lungs in the first place, a lot of people come down with dust pneumonia. And that would kill you. So it could kill you. So Dad took the kids. He lost the farm. And he's a veteran of World War I. And they were promised a bonus. Remember, we went over this. Promised a bonus. 1945, they would get a bonus for serving in World War I. Kind of like a retirement bonus to help out with retirement. Well, they're desperate. They're so desperate, they're willing to go all the way to Washington, demand their bonus now. And there they are. Now, there's always protests at Washington. What makes this one so different is that these protests are with veterans, trained military men. That's how governments go down. Here is one of their shanty towns or Hoovervilles for the Bonus Army. So Dad's got his kids and everything they own, including the only picture they got of Ma in that tent. There's his tent. And they're marching. Now notice, that's not what protesters do. Wow, these guys are marching in unison. Whoa. So, afraid of what they represent, Hoover tells MacArthur to get rid of them, to get them out of Washington. MacArthur, seeing them as radicals, breaks out the bayonets and flamethrowers. Not a good idea to do this. It gets on the front papers, and you can just mark the end of any chance Hoover has of getting reelected. Hoover Dam, called the Boulder Dam at the time. So, 1932 election, guess who's going to win? And it's not going to be Hoover. When your campaign slogan is, hey, it could have been worse, I can tell you, you're not going to win. 25% unemployment. So, what's going on here, though, is not the fact that there's the Depression. It's the fact that Hoover did not give the country any hope. What FDR is going to give them is not an end to the Great Depression. FDR is going to give them hope. Whether that was a good idea to enlarge the federal government's role is something for you to debate in an essay. But that's what's going to happen. Winner by a landslide, Roosevelt's going to do, I would compare to Obama. Obama had the election locked up. How could McCain win with the economy doing what it did? All Obama had to do was not be specific. Really go into no specifics. Change, hope. I mean, what's he saying? FDR is the guy who gave him that idea. I mean, that's what he did. Why would he give specifics? He's going to win. It's kind of like a team who's going to win a basketball game in the last minute, running out the clock, and then calling a timeout. You don't do it. Ta-dum. I mean, wow. Talk about a blowout. All right. Let's take a look at the Land of 4 and 5 notes. And we're going to continue the Land of 4 and 5 notes in the next video.